Saturday Night Theatre. Repertory in Britain. We present the Bromley Repertory Company in It's the Geography That Counts by Raymond Bowers. It's the geography that counts.
Marshal, there's a police car outside.
You came in the way I told you?
Yes?
Bring that in, will you?
Right.
No, just the bag. Leave the milk where it is.
What if they come in?
They'll find I'm out, which they'll have found when they first arrived. How long have you been waiting?
Only a minute. I thought you'd have got here first.
You overestimate your car. I parked it in the Cromwell Road. Do you want the keys? Catch.
Thanks.
It's near the Oratory. You have a brandy?
No.
Come on, have a drink and buck up.
The one thing in my favor is that I was cold sober.
The one thing in your favor is that I intend to get you out of it. Listen, James. Mother can prove where one of us was last night. That could be all that matters. Here, drink this.
It was Mother I was ringing. I didn't expect you to want to be in this at all. Why do you?
I have to be, James. I am. You forget the Crosby's the most publicized car in the country. It's an object of national interest, and I'm responsible for it. Whatever you did in it.
It's them. What are you going to say?
It's the panel bell, not the doorbell.
Oh.
Can't you tell the difference?
How do you know they're not on their way in?
They're in no hurry, James. The longer I'm out, the worse they can make it appear. All right. When did you decide to go up to Scotland? And are you still sure you told nobody?
I told you about that on long distance last night. Do you think we've time to...
Go on telling me what you told me on long distance last night. And also what you didn't.
They'll come in next, Marshal. I tell you they will.
Listen, James. The facts we have to adjust are these. I am a racing and works driver employed by the Crosby Motor Company, and yesterday I was giving the Crosby Sports Coupe 2.5-liter prototype a traffic test. The gearbox played up. I brought the car here and rang the factory.
Mm-hmm.
Then Mother telephoned me from Cornwall. Could I come down for the weekend? Could you? I walked to your place to tell you I'd be happier if you couldn't.
Huh.
As I turned the corner, you went by in your car. You stopped at your door and went in. A few moments later, I knocked. No answer. Why no answer, James?
I looked down from the window and saw it was you.
Your ignition key was still in the dash. Are you always so careless, James?
I was only popping in and out.
Well, I then took your car, drove straight here, picked up my spare door key, drove on to the club, and telephoned you. Well, what did I say?
You know damn well. You said, it's a bit wet for my car, but if you can do with it over the weekend, I've left the keys at the club. They're on the letterboard. Then you hung up.
Not immediately. I gave you time to argue, but you were in a silent sulk.
Yeah.
You then went to the club and got the keys. Who handed them to you?
Nobody. As you said, they were on the letterboard.
Good. So, while I was on my way to Cornwall in your car, you came here for mine. But you didn't take mine. You took the Crosby instead. Why?
Yours had no hood.
Oh, don't fiddle about.
To pay you back. I was going to dump it where it couldn't be found easily. As you say, you're responsible for it.
Why Scotland, of all places? Somewhere handy to the Duncans.
Could be.
I thought you were dropping those sort of people. Mother mentioned it. She was pleased.
All right. I thought of visiting them while I was up there. Make what you like of it.
I want to be sure of only one thing. Did the Duncans know you were coming up?
No.
Good.
Nobody knew I was going there. I've told you, because you'll need to know everything if you're going to be able to help. But if you mention it to Mother,
Don't worry. She'll never know.
Thank you.
Unless you told her yourself last night.
What are you talking about? I didn't see Mother last night.
But you could have, James. And that
is going to have to be your alibi.
How can it be? Yes, of course it could. All we've got to say is that we both went down to Mother's in my car.
Don't let it run away with you, James. Stick to what really happened. You decided to pay me out by taking the Crosby, didn't you? How did you get the key?
Does it matter? You know all that.
It matters very much. Now go over it. You were in my garage.
Your phone went. I didn't think to answer it at first.
But eventually you did.
It was the factory. Someone's secretary. She said, Mr. Arnitt. I thought I might do you some damage. So
you said yes.
Yes.
Well, you are Mr. Arnitt, aren't you?
She then said, would I, you, drive the Crosby over in the morning? They'd have a new gearbox ready then. I said, as a matter of fact, I'd done a silly thing. I'd misplaced the keys. I remember what she said because she sounded so annoyingly smug. She said, well, Mr. Arnitt, we'll simply have to send you a spare set, won't we?
Who did they send with the keys?
A messenger of some sort, I suppose. I didn't see him.
How'd you manage that?
When the bell rang, I went into the bathroom and turned the shower full on.
Oh.
After a bit, I heard the porter say, are you in there, Mr. Arnitt, sir? I answered without turning the shower off. He said, I'm just leaving a package, sir. I grunted, good. That was all. I came out, and the package was on the table, with the keys in it.
What time was this?
About 7.
So you see why you didn't drive me to Mother's in your car at 6.
What?
The porter heard me taking a shower in here at 7. So he thinks.
What does that matter?
Well, he may also have heard the Crosby leave. I take it that was soon afterwards.
Yes, about 10 minutes or so.
Just long enough for him to assume I'd dressed and driven off. Oh, no, thank you, James.
Does that mean you can't help me?
I'm quite determined to help you, James. You're sure you got the Crosby out unseen?
Marshal, if it weren't the Crosby, what would you do?
But it is the Crosby. I don't understand you.
Would you still want to get me out of it?
No idea, James.
You would, wouldn't you?
Well, have to, I suppose. Family feelings.
Is that possible, without family blood? We are only adopted brothers, after all, aren't we?
You were about to tell me whether you got the Crosby out of my garage unseen.
Well, it was dark. I was taking care not to be seen, surely.
Yes, well, I was lucky. Even so, the gearbox must have made a racket, so we can't fiddle with the time factor. How do you get on with the gears in any case?
Worse, all the way. After York, I couldn't change down to 3rd. I thought I was going to pack up altogether going through Newcastle.
Do you eat anywhere?
No.
How did you come to kill a cyclist on a straight and uninhabited stretch of flat road?
I think he came out of a side turning. He was moving out into the middle of the road.
What speed were you doing?
About 70.
What did you hit him with?
Right front mudguard.
Where?
His front wheel. I'm sure of that. I thought I got past. Then I heard the smallest tip. That's all it was.
And then his head on the road. Tell me about that.
I told you. Do you have to have it again? Do you like it? It sounded like a box breaking. A small plywood box. Not a crack, as if you'd sat on it, and it all gave way at once. Muffled. A dull sound.
What was the weather like?
What?
Was the road surface wet? I remember it rained down in Cornwall last night.
No, the road surface was dry. I wouldn't have seen the blood on it otherwise. Not in the dark.
How was he lying?
He was on his face. It was just a jumble in the dark. I could see it spreading from his...
You're sure you didn't touch him?
I couldn't.
All right. You drove until you saw a phone box.
Yes. At Monich. It's just a village.
And it was well after midnight.
Yeah, nobody was about.
You rang a hospital in Newcastle, didn't you? What did you say?
I reported the accident, naturally.
And when they asked your name, naturally, you hung up.
It was a simple reflex. I didn't intend to. It hadn't occurred to me to try and get out of it until then.
If it hadn't, you'd have dialed 999, not a hospital. However dimly you set out to run the moment you hit him, you only telephoned the hospital in case you were caught so that it couldn't be said that you'd left him to die. You stick to the truth. Just leave the lies to me.
Oh.
Well, what then? You got onto a side road and drove back to Newcastle. Had you already decided to dump the car there?
I just wanted to ring Mother. I was in a complete panic by then.
Yes, I know. That's why I wouldn't put her on. Now, be careful about this. I told you to leave the Crosby outside the station and take the first train back to London, meeting me here at 8. Who saw you at any stage, and would anyone remember?
Dozens of people must have seen me. But I can't recall them any more than I suppose they can recall me.
Anyone in your carriage?
No, I found an empty compartment.
It's a buckled fender. Any other damage?
It was only a tip, as I told you.
Did you leave anything of yours in the car?
No.
And you wore driving gloves all the time?
I told you.
Even when you dialed the telephone?
No. But getting out, getting in. It was a cold night, Marshal.
So any fingerprints found in the Crosby would be mine.
How do I know who you've had in the car lately?
That's a good point. I might be able to use it. All right, now. This is what we tell the police. The car was stolen.
Who stole it, then?
Oh, a person unknown. Broadly speaking, we simply change places. These are the facts from now on. Around 6 o'clock last night, I dropped in at your flat and had a drink. You told me you were going to spend the weekend at Mother's down in Cornwall, and she'd like me to come, too. I declined. I didn't appear to want to say why. So you thought it was because I was seeing Mercia. Next, soon after I left your flat, you got into your car to drive to Cornwall. Your way took you past my place. As you turned the corner, you saw the Crosby blocking the road, as if I just backed it out of my garage. It straightened up and went off immediately. You didn't think about it at the time, but it was odd for me to let the Crosby straddle the road like that. Normally, I'd back it alongside the curb.
And I heard a noisy gear change. Not like you at all, either, Marshal.
Say no more than this. The Crosby went off too quickly for you to see the driver. You didn't assume for a moment it wasn't me. But remembering other things now, you have to doubt it. Don't doubt it too enthusiastically, will you, James? Let them get the hang of our exact feelings for one another. They suggest you're not a favorably prejudiced witness.
Wouldn't it be safer for you if I said I knew you'd had no time to walk here from my flat before I drove by?
In which case you saw the Crosby being stolen and did nothing about it.
I could have assumed it was someone from the factory.
Having the run of my flat.
Just a garage. Surely it's better than having suspicion fall on you at all.
What suspicion, James? That I was a bad enough driver to kill a cyclist and just drive on? I could never have done either. Good God, I'm known internationally as a driver. Don't gild any lilies. Simply say no more than I've told you.
What if you don't bring it off?
Then I'll pass the whole thing back to you. Want to risk it? Drink?
No.
Oh, by the way, this is really important.
Uh-huh.
We have to allow for them tracing the trunk call you made after the accident. So, at 1 o'clock last night, someone rang for me at Mother's in Cornwall. And you, of course, took that call, since you were at Mother's and I wasn't.
But, who do I say it was?
Oh, I don't know. Say it was someone quite drunk or hysterical. You can't be sure. He simply asked for me and then refused to leave a name.
Will it work, Marshal?
Mother knows her side of it. You arrived at midnight and went to bed soon after.
What about Millie?
It was Millie's day off.
Didn't Mother tell her you were coming?
Mother didn't know I was coming until late afternoon, so how could she have told her? Try to remember the facts, James. The facts are that soon after I arrived, Mother went to bed. And a little later, so did I. When Millie came in, there was nobody for her to see. I heard her, by the way. And when I was leaving to drive up to London, Millie heard me. She put up her window.
Then she did see you.
No, she saw your car. It was dark. She'll say it was you without thinking. Now, have you got it all?
Yes, I think I have.
You amaze me. What are you going to say when they ask you what you were doing driving back to London at 2 in the morning after arriving at midnight?
Well, what am I?
The most important thing of the lot. The thing that establishes where I was. I rang you at Mother's. I rang from London.
At what time?
Oh, just on 2 o'clock. It's the geography that counts. I couldn't knock a man over north of Newcastle at 1 o'clock and ring you from London at 2.
You most certainly couldn't.
So it was a London call.
How could I have known?
I told you.
Is that enough?
It'll have to be.
But you can't prove it.
I don't expect to be asked to.
No?
Why should I be? Be clear, James. I asked you point blank where the Crosby was, if you'd been playing around with it. Now, you remembered then the way you'd seen it being driven off. You decided you'd better come up to London and help me.
But that brings it down to the telephone call. If they can prove you make no call at 2
Will you
o'clock...
accept the facts? You speak of a call from Newcastle which can be traced. Why should you lie about one from London which can't be? The only inference could be that you were lying for my sake. Oh, I'd like to see him prove it.
What's Mother going to say?
Only that you were in Cornwall. Only that she didn't hear you answer the telephone during the night.
Didn't.
She was asleep.
Mother says no calls. The police say 1, I say 2. Do you like that?
Very much. It's what you call mounting corroboration.
Oh.
Mother's story will simply be that she woke up this morning to find you gone, but that you'd left a note saying you'd ring from London and explain. A typed note, of course.
What's your story going to be?
Simply that I spent the night in London with Mercia. The porter here will be able to say there was nothing unusual about that. And so will you.
Mercia? I thought you'd broken with her.
So I have. But that doesn't mean she's broken with me.
What are you doing?
Calling the police.
Just a minute. Marshal, look, I really think it would be safer to say I've simply got suspicious about that first call. The one they can trace. It's that 2 o'clock call, you see. I don't think it...
Will you do it my way? Or do I leave you to do what the hell you like by yourself? I'm under no suspicion at all. Everything I say will be accepted. Good heavens, I'm the man who lost the car after all.
Yes, all right.
Hello? Look, I've no idea whom I'd like to speak to. Perhaps you can tell me. I'm Marshal Arnitt. My address is 16 Thurbridge Square, Southwest 1. Could you send someone up immediately? I want to report a stolen car. Yes. The racing driver. Thank you.
I should like my keys.
What?
My door key, the key to my car.
Oh, here.
Ah, here's a bit of luck. The Crosby key, too. I was afraid you'd leave that in the dash.
Reflex, I suppose.
You're all reflex.
Yes, well, you better not let them find it on you. It's supposed to have been stolen. Don't forget it.
And I'm supposed to have mislaid a key, aren't I? Which is why the factory sent me another. You will remember that, dear James, won't you? Here, put it in the writing table drawer.
Oh, very well. Where are you going?
To my bedroom, James.
Oh, I see.
Do you? What?
Those keys. You'll still have the key you didn't really mislay, won't you? The one you used yesterday, during the traffic test.
Don't worry about that, James. May I now get some cigarettes?
Oh, here.
Oh, thank you very much.
Panel bell.
How did they get here so quickly?
Radio to the car you saw outside.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Do come in.
Thank you. I'm Detective Superintendent Hurst at Scotland Yard.
You got here very quickly.
This is Detective Sergeant Daniels.
How do you, sir?
How do you do? I take it you're Mr. Marshal, Arnitt?
Yes, I'm the one who rang for you. Oh, by the way, this is my brother James.
Oh, how do you do, sir?
How do you do?
Adopted brother, that is?
Yes, to be precise.
We have to be, don't we? Sergeant, let Golding know that Mr. James Arnitt is here, too. He can return to the yard.
Yes, Super.
You can use my telephone, Sergeant.
No, it's all right, sir.
I know you in a way, sir.
Oh,
I've enjoyed your driving frequently.
thank you.
Can I offer you a drink, Superintendent?
A little early for me, I'm afraid.
Oh, do you mind? James and I have been up most of the night.
Not at all. Brandy, James?
A small one, thank you.
Do you drive too, sir? Oh, racing cars, I mean.
No, he doesn't. Do you, James?
No.
I thought perhaps you might have had a mutual interest with your brother.
My brother and I have few mutual interests, Inspector.
Superintendent, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, sir, this car you reported stolen.
Yes, well, I've been a fool not to have rung previously. But I really thought some idiot friend of mine must have pinched it for fun.
Have you any idea which friend?
No, I have so many.
All idiot?
Yes, more or less. The point is, I'll have the factory on my back if I don't move soon. If it's a friend, he'll just have to take what's coming to him.
I see. Mr. Arnitt, you're a driver of considerable reputation and knowledge. Why did you call in the yard over a stolen car?
But I didn't. I called the local police station. They must have called the yard.
You've no idea why they should have?
Well, it is the Crosby, after all.
It's an object of national interest, isn't it? Marshal was only saying that a little before you came in.
Oh. How long have you been discussing the matter?
What? Not long, Superintendent. Come in.
A little more's come in. I've written it all down in this, sir, but there'll be a typescript if you want one.
Oh, thank you, Denny. As a matter of fact, sir, your car has been found.
Oh, has it?
Yes. In Newcastle.
Where?
Newcastle.
Well, yes, I heard you. Frankly, I'm astonished.
It appears to have been involved in an accident. Does that astonish you, too?
Was the car badly damaged?
No. Chip of paint, a dent, right front mudguard.
What did it hit?
Whatever it hit, sir, I feel it proper to tell you this. You were responsible for the car, and it might be shown that you had time last night to travel from the scene of the accident to this flat before inviting me to call. Do you understand me?
Perfectly.
In that case, you will understand that I put this question only in fairness to you. Have you any knowledge of the accident I've just referred to?
How can I have? You've hardly told me what it was yet, have you?
A cyclist. Hit and run.
I see. Oh, dear. Couldn't be worse, could it?
No. Have you any knowledge of it, sir?
No. I'm shocked.
Well, as a matter of fact, James has more knowledge of it than you have, probably.
What?
Well, not the accident itself, of course, but perhaps of an event which led up to it.
Yes. Yes. I was driving past, Superintendent, here. I'm not very good at this. I was taking no notice yesterday. You see, I was going to spend the weekend with Mother in Cornwall. She lives there.
Begin at the beginning, James. I called on you yesterday afternoon just as you were getting ready to leave in your car.
Yes. My flat's in Osbridge Gardens. That's quite near here. I suggested to Marshal that he came down to Cornwall, too. He hadn't seen Mother for some time, and I thought he should.
Oh? Why, Mr. Arnitt?
Well, just because he hadn't gone down for some time.
When did you last see your mother, sir?
Oh, let's see, a month ago, about.
There was nothing special in your concern then?
Why, no.
The important thing, then, is that you drove down to Cornwall together.
You mean Marshal and I? Oh, no. I drove down alone.
Alone? Oh?
Yes, Marshal told me he wouldn't be going down because... because of a previous appointment. Of some sort. I thought that was a bit lame, and offered him a lift in my car.
I take it all this bears on the theft.
Yes, we think it does, Superintendent. We've been going over it rather carefully.
I see. What time was it your brother called on you?
About 6 o'clock.
I take it he didn't drive up in the Crosby.
No, he didn't. But that was one of the reasons he gave for not coming down to Cornwall with me. He said he still might be wanted in London to test the Crosby. Didn't sound very convincing to me. He'd already told me the gearbox was out of order, so... I thought he'd contradicted himself somewhere. I mean...
Might I ask you this? Are you and your adopted brother on good terms?
Well, we are brothers, Superintendent.
I see.
Legally.
Ah, yes. Go on, Mr. Arnitt.
Well, soon after Marshal left my flat, I set out for Cornwall in my car. As I turned the corner here, I saw the Crosby, stationary, blocking the street, as though it had just been backed out of Marshal's garage. Then a moment later, it drove off.
Yes?
I hardly got within 100 yards of it, I suppose. I really wasn't paying much attention.
This was about 7 o'clock.
Yes. I drove on to Mother's. I got there at about midnight and went to bed soon after. At about 1, or 1:30, I heard the telephone. It was a bit late for anyone to be disturbing Mother, so I went down. It was a trunk call. When the caller was put through, I thought he was a bit drunk or hysterical.
What was he ringing you about?
He wasn't ringing me. He was asking for Marshal. When I said Marshal hadn't come down, he rang off immediately.
Leaving no name?
No. I asked, of course, but he...
He rang off immediately. Can you tell me, sir? Had you given anyone the impression you would be at your mother's last night?
Well, no, I'm sure I didn't.
The man was obviously ringing around on the off chance, Superintendent. He told me he'd already tried Marshal's London number.
Ah. And had he?
How could I possibly know?
Did you hear the telephone ring in this flat at about 1 or 1:30?
This morning. Oh, I wouldn't have been in at that time.
Oh? Where were you then?
Does that matter? The point is, the man had no reason to tell James he tried my London number if he hadn't.
I didn't think that was the point, sir. I gather you'd never let a car straddle a street on leaving a garage. So your brother is going to put the inference that he saw the Crosby being stolen. Is that so, Mr. Arnitt?
Yes, it is. Marshal would have backed it alongside the
The
curb.
accident took place 300 miles from London shortly before 1 o'clock this morning. Now, we can establish theft if you, sir, can account for your whereabouts in London at any time after, say, 9 p.m. last night, to be utterly sure.
I think you better hear what James has to say first, Superintendent. I'm not particularly keen to account for my whereabouts.
Oh?
But my only witness wouldn't be pleased.
Why not, Mr. Arnitt?
For reasons that are pleasant only until they are made public.
I see. This anonymous caller, then, did you discuss him with your mother?
It was 1 o'clock in the morning.
You simply went back to bed, then?
Yes. Then about an hour later, Marshal rang me himself.
From London, I take it?
Yes.
Why were you ringing your brother?
I found out the Crosby wasn't here. I thought James must have been up to something.
Was he the first person you suspected?
Oh, I don't know, Superintendent. I'd had quite a night. I was in a spur-of-the-moment frame of mind.
What did your brother say?
Nothing much. He asked me if I'd been fooling around. Then I remembered the way I'd seen the Crosby blocking the road. And a noisy gear change that drove off.
The gearbox was out of order.
Not between first and second.
You discussed the mechanics?
What?
You've just told me you were surprised to hear a noisy gear change in the Crosby. Yet you knew the gearbox was out of order. In that case, whoever was driving the car, even an expert like your brother, could hardly have avoided making a noise.
Well, when he called at my flat, I think he told me about the gearbox then.
You've already told me that he did. But in such detail?
Oh, you're confusing him, Superintendent. As a matter of fact, I had no reason to go into details about it at his flat. Only when I rang him in Cornwall.
Ah, thank you. Please go on, sir.
Well, that was all. I thought I'd better come up to London to go over everything.
What made you feel so concerned?
Concerned?
You haven't much time for your brother, yet you left your bed at 2 in the morning to help him over the theft of a car, which didn't belong to him.
I was interested. Anyway, not getting on as brothers in the family is one thing. Not wanting to help him when he's in trouble is another.
What trouble?
He's responsible for the car. It's an object of national
I
interest.
beg your pardon.
Yes?
An object of...
National interest. You can imagine what the newspapers will say.
About what?
About him being so careless.
I suppose your mother was worried about it.
She doesn't know about it yet. I told you, I didn't wake her.
Oh? Not after your brother rang either?
No, I left a note on her typewriter saying I'd have to return to London in a hurry. I want to ring her as soon as possible, when all this is cleared up.
Then, let me understand this. You didn't see your mother after you retired for the first time last night?
No.
You saw her before, of course.
Oh, of course.
Was there anyone else in the house?
Millie came home around 1. I only heard her. She's the cook.
You didn't see her?
She saw me when I left for London, only from her window.
There were no other guests?
No.
But the point is, your mother can establish when you arrived, and Millie can establish when you left.
If you can't accept my word, Superintendent, they can.
I accept that if Millie, the cook, can say you were in Cornwall at 2 o'clock this morning, you couldn't have been north of Newcastle at 1. Well, I think it's clear to me. You drove straight here, I take it, and met your brother this morning, just now.
Yes.
In this flat.
Yes.
And you discussed this matter.
Yes.
Well, watching you has made me thirsty, Mr. Arnitt. Could I perhaps have that drink, after all?
Certainly. What would you like?
A little whiskey and a lot of soda.
And you, Sergeant?
Oh, well, the same, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Cheers.
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 Oh, you haven't got one?
That's all right. I'm not having another.
Oh, and cheers again. And Mr. Arnitt, you'll appreciate, as I told your brother at the beginning, this isn't a yard matter, really, but I think your evidence might be of considerable value if it could be circulated. I think you ought to put it into a formal statement.
I'd be glad to.
Good. Assuming the matter's ever cleared up, that is, that the thief's ever found, you'd have no objection to being called, would you?
None at all.
I'm glad to find you so obliging. Would it put you out to accompany Sergeant Daniels to the local station? It's only just round the corner.
Can't I make the statement here, to you?
Not really. It simply isn't a yard matter.
Oh.
I'm only suggesting that the sergeant accompanies you because it can save you a lot of explaining.
All right. Do you mind if I rush you, Sergeant? I'd like to ring my mother as soon as it's over.
I'll ring her now.
Get the statement over, James. I'll ring her myself soon.
Very well. Are you coming too, Marshal?
Oh, while I'm on it, I thought I might as well sort out your evidence for you too, sir. It's more comfortable here.
Of course. That's very good of you, Superintendent.
Well, I'll look back.
What? Oh, yes. Yes, do.
You look back too, Danny.
Yes, Super.
Well, now, what time did your brother arrive this morning, Mr. Arnitt?
Here?
Where else?
Well, I think he dropped into his flat first and then walked over.
Is that what he told you?
Well, I think so.
You gathered it.
Yes.
And the time was?
Oh, I don't know, about 8.
I didn't see him.
Oh?
I'd been sitting in a car outside this flat with Sergeant Daniels since 6:30.
You sat outside the wrong entrance, then.
Which one should I have sat outside then?
The corner block. As usual, James took the shortcut and came in there. The passages connect.
He told you this?
No, but he always does come that way. It's natural for anyone coming from his direction, if he knows his way, that is.
That could be said. As a matter of fact, he was observed entering the door you've mentioned at 10 minutes to 8 by a plain-clothes constable. However, he couldn't have come straight in here.
No?
No. I rang your bell a few minutes later. There was no answer.
I see.
I don't.
What?
Were you here at all during the night, Mr. Arnitt?
You know, I'm sorry,
But I'm not going to answer that unless I have to.
Uh-huh. Had you not been, and had you returned here after 6:30, should the sergeant or myself have seen you?
Well, now, that depends on which way I might have entered, I suppose.
I suppose it was the corner block. Should the constable have seen you?
Well, he didn't, did he?
No.
You've been looking at my bathroom window, haven't you? The alley outside connects with the backyard of the Brompton Arms.
The pub.
I often come in that way.
Do you often leave your bathroom window unlocked when you go out?
What specific occasion are you thinking of?
If you came in that way frequently, you'd have to leave the window unlocked just as often when you went out.
Well, then, when I expect to come in that way, I leave it unlocked just as often when I go out.
Ah. Did you leave it unlocked so last night?
No.
Where does this door lead?
The kitchen,
And the door beside the sink?
the garage.
You mean you can also enter the flat through the garage?
Yes.
You lock the connecting door, I suppose?
No need. I lock the garage door.
Could I have a look, please?
Certainly. Let me go first. I'll show you the way.
Well, there we are, Mr. Arnitt. I've been trying to discover if access to this flat was easily obtainable last night.
You've been trying to discover if I drove off in the Crosby myself last night and hit a man north of Newcastle. And if I did, what I hoped to gain by running away.
I have to cover every contingency, sir.
Well, this one's easy to cover. I did.
What did you hope to gain by running away, then?
Nothing, it turns out, doesn't it?
It was just panic?
Yes.
I congratulate you on the control you've gained since.
Thank you.
These windows?
What about them?
Locked.
Yes.
And that door?
The bedroom.
Could I see, please?
Certainly.
Oh, morning, Marshal.
Good Lord.
Who's this?
Detective Superintendent Hurst of Scotland Yard.
What have you been up to? Can I use the bath?
Certainly. This is Miss Sparling, Superintendent.
How do you do?
Good morning, Superintendent. Excuse me, won't you?
I didn't quite catch the name. Sparley or Starling?
Oh, Sparling.
This is a self-contained flat.
Yes.
I gather, then, that Miss Sparling can establish your whereabouts last night.
You don't seem to have understood, Superintendent. My whereabouts last night were behind the wheel of the Crosby experimental car. After 1 a.m., my whereabouts were various, on the run.
What can Miss Sparling establish, then?
Nothing.
Then why is she here?
I've no precise idea, only a general suspicion.
Perhaps I'd better speak to her.
No, you had not. Not before I have. You can be quite sure she's my business, Superintendent.
You've confused me, Mr. Arnitt. While your brother was here, you led me to believe you might produce a young woman at some time or other.
While my brother was here, I led you round the mulberry bush.
Would you mind telling me the truth now?
But I just did.
But how much am I to believe of what your brother told me? Did you call on him at 6 o'clock last night?
Yes.
And he did see the Crosby at about 7?
Yes.
But you were in it, not some unknown.
Yes.
Did he know that?
Not at the time.
Where were you going?
Scotland.
Why?
I proposed to tell my solicitor.
Uh-huh. Your brother also told me he went to Cornwall. Should I doubt that?
No. Millie can prove it. So can Mother.
He spoke of 2 telephone calls he received in Cornwall.
The first was made by me from Newcastle, and you can probably trace it.
We have.
Aha.
But the second, from London.
Was never made.
This was the one lie you concocted together, then. Apart from saying the Newcastle caller wasn't you.
Yes.
If you intended to give yourself up, Mr. Arnitt, why did you let him tell it to me?
There is no logical answer to that, Superintendent. I panicked last night. I regained my wits this morning. Perhaps I realized I could never prove the London call.
Why was he so willing to tell it?
Hmm?
He dislikes you, yet he was willing to lie to the police for you.
Do you know, that point puzzles me as much as it does you.
Could your mother have had anything to do with his attitude?
Yes, possibly.
He told me he didn't discuss it with her.
Well, he had to say that, didn't he? We wanted to keep her out of it as much as possible.
I see. You're on good terms with your mother?
Yes, of course.
And James?
Her darling.
That young lady is going to get parboiled. Ah. I understand you were the first adopted.
Yes.
How old were you?
Matter of months.
And when James was adopted?
He was 4.
You?
6.
Did you fancy the idea?
I was told I was getting a playmate.
Did you fancy it?
As far as I can remember, I fancied the idea, but I didn't fancy the playmate.
Did James receive preference?
I don't know what you mean.
You said he became the darling.
Mother's. Father rather forced that.
You were his.
Father didn't think much of James.
And a lot of you.
The story is that James was actually Mother's son, but not Father's. If you see what I mean.
What do you think?
They resemble.
I understand there was a divorce.
Separation. I was 15.
Did you resent that?
I didn't understand it.
Once you'd understood it.
I've always regretted it.
You say you rang your mother last night. Why not your father?
My father is in hospital. He's dying.
Oh. I'm sorry to hear about that.
I should have thought you might have known.
How long?
Weeks, perhaps. What's any of this got to do with my road accident?
Well, were you worried about the news disturbing him at such a time? Is that why you ran away?
He's been in a coma for days. The news wouldn't register.
May I ask you this? Does he make you an allowance at present?
James and I each receive $1,000 a year. He believes men should work for a living. Well, I am now going to the police station to make a statement.
I thought you'd see your solicitor first.
I prefer to make the statement as soon as possible. The longer I'm thought to be on the run, the worse it'll look.
Oh, you can always call me. I can testify I saw you here at 8 or so.
Would you do me a favor, Superintendent?
If I can.
Wait for my brother and tell him.
I intended to do that, Mr. Arnitt. He gave me false information.
Mercia?
Yes?
Ready?
Soon?
Whisking her away.
Leave her alone, Superintendent. She's just a girl who prefers showers.
Your collar's in at the back. Here. Allow me.
Oh, thank you very much.
Someone rang the Newcastle hospital at 2 last night.
Near 1. That was me reporting the accident. But I didn't leave my name.
I'm referring to a second call. Nearer 2.
That was James.
James?
Yes, he rang from Cornwall. Naturally, he didn't leave his name either. He had to find out whether the man was dead.
Why?
He wasn't prepared to lie for me on anything less than manslaughter.
He told you what the hospital said, of course.
Yes, when we met here this morning.
Then, surely.
Anything I can make for breakfast?
I'm sending you home for breakfast.
Oh. Get what you came for, Superintendent?
Yes. Would you like to answer a question, too?
Marshal says not. Good morning.
Good morning, Miss Sparling. May I use your telephone, Mr. Raymond?
Yes, please make yourself at home. Come along, Mercia.
Oh, radio room? Hurst here. Message to car 125. Mr. Marshal Arnitt has just left with a young lady called Miss Mercia Sparling. I want her followed. No, P for Peter.
Oh, you're still here.
Yes. I've been waiting for you. Your brother's just stepped out.
Oh.
Mr. Arnitt, Are you satisfied with this statement you've just made?
Why? Have I missed anything?
I mean, if it were produced in a court, the police would call you. There's nothing you deny in it, I suppose?
Of course not.
Then I arrest you on the charge of having murdered your legal mother,
What?
Audrey Arnitt, at Tranquil, Cornwall, at or about 2:30 this morning.
No.
And I warn you that anything you say will be taken down and may be used in evidence.
Mercia,
How are the police?
I put you into a taxi and told you to cruise around London for an hour and then telephone me. Why didn't you?
Because a police car cruised around after me.
How do you know it was a police car?
The taxi driver said so.
Why should you have cared?
The taxi driver asked me what I'd done. I said I didn't know. He asked me what I thought the police thought I'd done. I asked myself and decided I should stop cruising suspiciously around London.
So you suspiciously gave them the slip.
No. I got out of the taxi to ask the police why they were following me.
And what did they say?
Nothing. It was at the Waterloo Bridge lights in heavy traffic. As the lights were green, the police cars simply didn't notice me and sailed straight through.
You're serious?
Very. I hadn't paid the taxi man and he didn't budge. So the car behind him hit him, and then the police car hit both of them. I came here by tube and made myself some breakfast. Want some?
No, thanks. They gave me a cup of tea at the police station. Where's James?
I don't know. He'd gone when I got here. Gone home, I suppose. Why did you rush off without telling me anything, Marshal?
I had to make a statement to the right quarters while it could still sound voluntary.
Why?
Before they came to me.
But they'd been to you.
No, that was Scotland Yard.
What is all this? I thought this was only a road accident.
And so it is. There was a departmental mix-up because the Crosbys involved.
I don't understand you, Marshal. You've admitted doing it. So what are they so interested in now? Why am I being followed?
They're interested in exactly what I'm interested in. You were in my bedroom this morning. Did you hear me come in earlier?
I don't know. I was asleep.
When you first became aware of my proximity, who was I with?
I can't really tell you, Marshal. You know how I sleep.
Well, what on earth were you doing in my bed to begin with?
You rang yesterday.
When I rang yesterday, I didn't leave a message, nor my name.
My landlady recognized your voice.
I see.
And I was in.
Then why didn't you come to the phone?
I wanted to see if you'd ring back.
I only wanted to say you'd left a cigarette case in the Crosby the day before yesterday, and I'd send it round. This case.
Thank you. I thought, if you'd take the trouble to ring back, you'd be certain to want to make it up.
Make what up?
The day before yesterday.
The day before yesterday, I only said I saw no point in marrying you. How did that alter things?
It only broke our engagement, that's
We've never
all.
been engaged.
Well, you asked for your key back. It's the same thing. Like some coffee?
Just the key, if you don't mind.
It's in my bag, here on the couch. I'd like some coffee. I've got a bit of a hangover. Cigarette?
No, thanks.
Do you have a light?
Hmm? Oh, yes. Here. I killed a man last night, Mercia.
I heard you telling the detective.
Did you hear James and me talking before the detective came in?
No, but I know you did talk.
You heard me admit it to Hurst?
Who?
The detective.
Yes, I did. I think the first thing that really registered was the detective saying he'd like a drink. And straight after that, James went to make a statement to the police. Then you told the detective you'd killed a man and James had come up from Cornwall to lie for you. After that, I went into the shower and I couldn't hear much. But what difference does it make?
Difference?
Whether I heard you and James rehearsing his story or not. You've told the police you did. So why worry about what I know?
Because the police will probably ask you what you know. It's this, you see, Mercia. I don't know what view Hurst will take of James giving false information, or the local police for that matter. But the fact remains, he gave it, for me, although he detests me. Well, I'd like to feel that you could be called as a witness to our conspiracy, that's all.
What'll they do to you?
Either prove me guilty or not. Either way, I'm not likely to race again.
Whose fault was it?
The police haven't decided yet. They'd only have my skid marks to go on and the position of the body.
Will you be able to get out of it?
That depends on you.
Mm-hmm.
Or rather, it could depend on you.
Mercia,
Hmm?
what did you do last night? Exactly.
I've told you.
After I rang yesterday afternoon, you didn't answer.
I got depressed and had a few drinks.
Who with?
With me.
At your flat?
Yes?
How did you come here?
What?
Well, did you walk?
No.
Taxi?
Mm-hmm.
Or what time was that?
Oh, I've no idea.
No, it's not like you to drink alone, Mercia.
No, it isn't.
What did you do when you got here? How long was the light on, for instance?
Not long at all.
You simply found your pajamas and got into bed, like old times.
Yes. I was encouraged to find them in the dresser and not the post.
Hmm?
My pajamas.
Oh.
Try to remember what time you got into bed.
As I was in no condition to know the time, how can I?
Oh, dear. The early hours, then.
Yes, that I do know.
Well, why didn't you say so, then? Now, look, the driver who brought you, was he from the rank?
No.
He hadn't driven you before?
No, he hadn't.
Then you could have been anywhere last night for all anybody knew.
Where did you have in mind?
With me. In the Crosby.
Well, I would have been if you'd asked me.
And if I ask you now?
If it will help.
It might. I honestly don't believe the accident was my fault, Mercia. But I can't risk the police disagreeing. And bad publicity would ruin me. After all, I am patron of 14 boys' clubs. And there's a directorship when I finish racing next year.
You were going to finish then, were you?
Yes, glad to. You were in the Crosby with me on Tuesday and Thursday last week, weren't you? Your fingerprints will be there anyway. You could tell the police that the accident was not my fault. That the cyclist simply materialized, probably from a side road. That it was a miracle I didn't go clean over the top of him. But in point of fact, I only just touched his front wheel. I was almost past. It was the fall that actually killed him.
But you panicked.
Only when I saw he was dead.
But it was still a panic. And from you, of all people. What do I say about that?
Well, what do you?
You'd been on the road with an experimental car all day. You'd only finished the racing season a few days before. You were in a state of stress.
But sober.
You were?
I always am, whenever I drive.
Mm-hmm. So when you broke down, I made you run. Is that it? I knew you were in no condition to give a good account of yourself.
Yes, you only wanted me to recover before I gave myself up.
It's still thin.
You forget. I did give myself up.
But why did you run so far? Why did we leave the car in Newcastle?
Well, let's say that was your decision.
Well, it's a pretty silly one.
You're a pretty silly woman.
Thank you. What about the statement you've made?
What?
Does it mention me?
How could it? I didn't know your movements last night, but I made it.
Does it say you were alone?
No, it simply doesn't say whether I was accompanied or not.
James's statement. Does that prove anything?
Merely that he was in Cornwall.
Which no longer has anything to do with the case.
No.
So it all depends on little old me, doesn't it?
That's what I told you.
What was I doing in the Crosby with you at 1 a.m, heading north?
Well, we've got no choice about that, have we?
Shouldn't we have? You are patron of 14 boys' clubs.
Oh, well, it's just too bad.
It wouldn't be if we'd been going off to get married.
Mercia springs her catch.
Mercia's been springing her catch for the last 15 months.
But never so well.
That's what I hope.
You are serious? It's your condition?
Condition?
Business condition, for goodness sake. All right, then. I'll marry you, Mercia.
When, Marshal?
After the case.
How long after the case?
I really think 6 months.
I'd steel myself for you to say 5 years.
You could hardly be taken for an unprejudiced witness if you were my fiancé when you testified.
I could hardly be taken for an unprejudiced witness if I were in a car with you 300 miles away from home at 1 o'clock in the morning.
I'm serious, Mercia.
So am I. Well, it's very nice of you, Marshal, and I know how honored I should and do feel. But I really must turn you down.
What? Not just a
What's
minute.
more, I mean it. You see, Marshal, there'd be nothing to stop you forgetting the ceremony, would there?
Except your testimony.
Which I already would have given.
Well, what do you suggest, then? I can't fish you out of my sleeve any time I like. I want to do it today if I do it at all, this morning.
Some money.
Ah,
We could call it an ipso facto allowance, if you like.
how much?
Oh,
Come on, I'm about to compose a check. How much?
well, 2,000 a year. What's that for 6 months?
1,000.
1,000, then.
Well, that all right?
Lovely. Now go and cash it.
Oh, I'm not going to cash it until I've heard your testimony.
I see. Well, in that case...
That was £1,000 you just tore up. You wouldn't have bounced. Why?
For one thing, it's Saturday. By the time I've made my statement, the banks will be closed, allowing you to stop any checks you care to first thing Monday morning. For another, I thought you still had some affectionate opinion of me. Just now you wrote a message saying you hadn't. I don't think you have for anybody.
So you'll go now, will you?
Are you coming with me?
Well, you've taken yourself home in happier circumstances. You shouldn't have any trouble now.
I mean to the police station. I don't quite know how to go about it.
Oh. Well, you just walk in and say, I should like to make a statement, and make it. However, what exactly do you propose to say?
What we decided.
That's decent of you. Why?
Why?
Yes, why?
So you'll think well of me, as you'll never see me again. Get your coat, Marshal. I haven't all day. Panel bell. More police?
Yes, it's pretty sure to be. Now, come on now.
Go. What's the matter?
Into the garage.
Oh, but they couldn't have come at a more convenient time.
For goodness
Let's
sake,
say we'll walk.
girl. Now, come on. And keep your voice down.
Oh, but
if it is the police, it'll be to show me the accident photographs. If they look good for me, I won't drag you into this. If they look bad, you can go to the station later and say your piece.
but this is
But I
ridiculous.
don't want them to find you here in open collusion with me. Now, go on down, girl, and keep quiet.
Oh. What if they find me here? I couldn't even say I was powdering my nose. It's a garage. I'm going to look pretty silly.
And so you are, dear. So you are.
At least I shan't be able to hear, though, shall I?
Oh, hello, Sergeant.
Hello, Mr. Arnitt. I've given you up. Thought you must be out. I hope I'm not disturbing you.
No, come in.
Thank you, sir.
As a matter of fact, you are. I've been up all night, as you know, and I was having a nap.
Well, the super asked me to see you, sir. He felt you should know immediately. The man you knocked over, he's in no danger.
What?
Well, it's easily explained, sir. You simply didn't kill him.
Yes, but I heard his head go.
No. He'd had a few. Not many. There's no suggestion he was drunk.
What did I hear, then? Good God, I saw the blood on the road.
Well, he'd left a party with a bottle. They apparently shared out when the party ended.
Oh, and it was the bottle I heard.
Yes, he was carrying it in his jersey. Cut him about a bit.
Lucky it didn't kill him.
Yes. What you saw was the contents.
I suppose I'll still have to appear in court tomorrow.
Yes, sir. But I shouldn't worry. I've been to the local station and they've got the photographs. Your skid marks are on the right side of the road. For you. And with your reputation as a driver to begin with. Well, and the other man having been to a party.
But what about my not remaining at the scene of the accident?
Yes, well, sir. You know as well as I do, that's what they'll hammer.
Well, it was good of you to come and tell me.
The super had to go to the yard, sir, or he'd have told you himself.
Yes, well, you'll thank him for me, won't you?
You can do that yourself, sir.
Hmm?
When he arrives.
Is he likely to be long? I still haven't seen my solicitor.
Well, if it's not convenient, sir, I'll wait outside and tell him.
Oh, no, don't do that.
Could I use your bathroom, sir?
I'm sure you'll find it empty, Sergeant.
Eh? Oh, thank you, sir.
Mr. Sergeant, in the bathroom.
Yes, Constable Fletcher, I noticed.
Did you manage it without Mr. Arnitt knowing he was looking for the girl?
Let's think so, for what it's worth.
Well, schluck, I suppose. What about the bedroom?
We can see in there from here for ourselves.
Yes, but the sergeant might know that.
When he finishes washing his hands, he'll point and I'll shake my head. Just watch. Meantime, take off your shoes. Quietly.
There he went.
There he what?
Pointed.
And there I shook my head.
My shoes have rubber soles on. Do I need to take them off?
All right, then. Keep them on. Take this newspaper and go to the garage door without any clatter. Push the paper under it, but,
Leave a bit showing.
yes, Constable. And then what?
Wait to see if she's in there, which you show by pulling the paper in.
That's it.
She won't, though. Not even if she's in there.
She wouldn't if she were a man, Fletcher. But a woman's always curious. But to make sure she does, walk away heavily after 2 minutes. Walk right out of the alley. I'll still be here, you see.
Sergeant, what exactly is going on here?
Going on, sir?
Hurst himself said this wasn't a yard matter.
Well, he wants to tell you something personally, sir.
Oh? Well, do you know what it is?
Yes, sir, I do. Your legal mother, sir.
What about her?
Well, I'm sorry to have to tell you this myself. She was found dead this morning.
What? Oh, no.
Your brother is being held on a charge of murder.
I'm sorry. Would you please get that?
Yes, certainly, sir. Hello, Super. I've told him about his mother.
How did he take it?
All right.
The girl's in his garage.
Uh-huh.
Wait outside, will you, Daniels?
Yes, sir.
Hello, Inspector. Won't you sit down?
Thank you, sir.
Now, I want you to be clear about this. I'll answer no questions concerning my brother until his solicitor can be present.
I understand your feelings, sir, but it's my duty to ask you certain questions about him. And do believe me, any refusal of yours to answer could only impress a court as an attempt to shield him.
Even so, I've had 20 minutes sleep since yesterday morning, and I just received a shock. Any court would understand you've no right to choose such a moment to question me about anything.
Choose?
Choose, or for all I know, manufacture. I'm thinking of some of the questions you asked when you came about my road accident. Questions to James about my mother. You knew all along she was dead. If you're satisfied you had grounds to charge him with murder, it's only because you got him to incriminate himself before you told him what he was answering for.
I came here at your request, Mr. Arnitt. I naturally put myself at your service.
James was entitled to a warning, and you know it. Bring that out in court.
I must confess, I'm surprised to find you defending him.
So am I. But then I'm prejudiced by the fact that the precise night he was supposed to have been bad enough to murder his mother, he was good enough to come up to London and help his brother to the extent of giving false information to the police.
Was it false information that he was in Cornwall? You telephoned him there. You spoke to him. Well, isn't it so?
Have you traced the call?
Yes.
Then the question's superfluous, isn't it?
Evidence consists in answers, not questions, Mr. Arnitt. But I take your point about your condition. What time this afternoon would you like me to return?
Before you go, Superintendent, I want you to tell me everything you know about my mother's death.
She died of strychnine poisoning, Mr. Arnitt, administered in pill form.
Oh. But how can you be possibly so sure of that so soon?
Soon?
Well, it's scarcely 11 o'clock. Millie never went in to wake Mother before 10. How long does an autopsy take?
Last night, Millie had cause to go in at 2. She heard a car and got to her window in time to see it drive off. She assumed, from what she could see of it, that it was your brother's. But she couldn't be sure. And it's a lonely house.
I see. That hadn't occurred to me.
She found neither of the guest rooms had been slept in. So she looked into your mother's room. And there was enough light from the landing for her to notice.
Notice?
In strychnine poisoning, the body assumes a grotesque attitude, I'm afraid. Your mother was in the habit of taking sleeping pills, I understand?
Well, yes. She suffered from insomnia for years.
Thank you. So in the event of her being disturbed after dozing off, it's quite likely she would take more pills.
Yes, I suppose so.
Last night, you rang your mother from Newcastle.
James wouldn't bring her to the phone.
Isn't it quite likely, however, that he woke her to discuss your accident?
He says he didn't.
Isn't it indeed possible that she heard the phone to begin with?
Anything's always possible.
Well, whatever happened, after her death, the Cornwall police found a glass on a salver on her bedside table. The glass had her fingerprints on it, and it contained a little milk. The supposition is that she thought she'd been given her usual sedatives.
Has anyone cared to suppose she gave them to herself?
Hotting up milk, delivering it to herself on a salver, swallowing the pills, then wiping the salver clean. Oh, really, Mr. Arnitt?
How do you know the milk had been heated?
It was still warm when Millie found it. Oh. Now, sir, let me put this to you squarely. This morning, your brother made a sworn statement to the local police about your road accident. That statement fixed his whereabouts at the scene of the murder at about the time of the murder in Cornwall. If I can prove through you that that statement was substantially the truth, I can also prove that any other statement he now wishes to make must be a lie.
Aren't you being a little elaborate? The local police also have a statement of mine giving you all the corroboration you want. Haven't you seen it?
Yes, I have it.
Then why not be satisfied? Why press me to accuse him? I find that difficult to do, whatever the evidence. He simply isn't capable of murder.
He doesn't encounter the same difficulty in accusing you, I'm afraid.
He's done that?
Yes?
Is that why you're here?
Any statement that can be refuted naturally interests me.
You mean a statement of his? A new one?
Yes?
What does he say, then?
He says he stole the Crosby.
He can't be all that of a fool.
He seems content to be.
Well, then he's simply turned the whole thing round, end to end, putting me at the wrong end.
The Cornwall end.
Well, what do I do about that?
Not very much so. You see, the material facts support his old statement more than his new one. Take fingerprints. There are plenty of old ones in your usual bedroom. But in James's room, there are none at all, old or new. The room's been wiped clean.
Has James heard this?
He confirms a statement of Millie's that you'd taken a fancy to his room and used it sometimes when he wasn't down.
Yes, that's true enough. Only once or twice, though, depended on the weather.
But, last night?
Last night, I wasn't there, remember?
No. Again, your brother, in claiming to have stolen the Crosby, puts himself in the position of having to know as much about the accident near Newcastle as you do, or more. But he seems to know less.
Well, he could only tell you what I told him about it, couldn't he?
That's my point. Then there's another material fact about the accident which neither of you mentioned. Have you lost a glove?
What?
A glove was found in the Crosby, between the driver's seat and the door, wedged in a joint.
Wonder it didn't fall out.
It was caught. The bigger wonder is that it was left there and forgotten.
Panic, Superintendent. You never know what you'll do in that.
It would be yours, then.
I'm sure I don't know. I have several.
This could be very important, Mr. Arnitt.
Yes, I suppose it could.
I asked your brother about it. He claimed a connection. You might say he had two.
Did it fit him?
It wasn't his size.
Do you want to see if I'm Cinderella?
Please.
Give it to me.
Here you are,
Thank you. May I try it on?
if you wish. Well, that rather fits the facts, doesn't it?
It fits my hand. But it doesn't happen to be my glove. It doesn't happen to be James's either. He'd never use rabbit fur. He'd rather freeze.
I see.
May I ask, Superintendent, what motive my brother suggests I had for the murder?
You are in debt.
I know. It's my policy for pleasant living.
Your brother says your parents, I mean, your legal parents, remained on bad terms after the separation.
Yes, they did.
He also told me he believed he was really the son, natural, I mean, of his legal mother.
He always liked to think it. I told you so.
Was it your opinion, Mr. Arnitt?
No, it was not.
Was it your father's? Was it not, in fact, the eventual cause of their separation?
The eventual cause of their separation is to be found in their petitions. Cruelty and incompatibility.
But their joint and very substantial business interests compelled each of them to make a will in favor of one another. That is true, I take it.
I believe so.
What emerges is that, according to your brother, you knew that if your father were the first to die, you might find yourself willed improperly by your mother.
By my affectionate mother, who invites me down for weekends. Oh, really, Superintendent.
Since your father gave you power of attorney to sign business documents on his behalf.
Whose interpretation is that?
Your brother's. Have you ever seen your father's will?
No. But as he could die at any moment, I dare say I'll soon be able to tell you about it.
I merely want to report that your brother doesn't expect to figure in it. And now your mother is dead, it will also be the will disposing of much of her estate as well as his own.
So it will.
A tenuous motive, isn't it?
What does he say, then? That I decided to kill my mother? I equipped myself with strychnine, arranged for James to steal a car for which I was responsible, arranged for him to drive 300 miles to a spot where a tipsy cyclist was waiting to be knocked down, then arranged for him to ring me and ask for help, and then...
Please, sir. Oh, you don't have to show me how ridiculous it all is. I merely feel duty-bound to report his accusation. However, let's get it right. He claims that you saw an opportunity last night. That's all at first. That you were pleasantly surprised by the news of his accident, shall we say.
Shall we say, my accident?
Please go along with me, sir. He says you didn't want to risk a murder at the price of a manslaughter. So you rang the hospital to satisfy yourself that the man's injuries were not fatal. And only
It's obvious to me what James has to say. But this is what I have to. He made a sworn statement this morning concerning the road accident, and so did I. Both statements agree that he was in Cornwall at Mother's and that I was not. You can please yourself.
There's also Millie Freeman's statement.
Oh?
The car she saw was undoubtedly your brother's. He says you borrowed it. I'm sure you'll say you didn't. And there's a statement by Miss Frida Gainring, an employee of the Crosby Company. She says she spoke to you on the telephone yesterday and arranged to send you some spare car keys. Your brother says she spoke to him. Your contention I will take for granted.
How kind of you. Thank you.
There's also the statement of your porter. He places you in the flat at a significant time, but admits he heard only your voice from the bathroom. Your brother says it was his voice. You will say it was yours. That he did not see you enter the flat at the required time matters as little as the fact that he did not see your brother enter it. As far as I can discover, entry to this flat was made at will through the door, the garage, the window, and for all I know, the chimney. But isn't it just possible that there's another statement to come? One which illuminates the others beyond any doubt of error?
Well, is that?
This morning you led me to expect one. The young lady you introduced me to, Miss,
Sparling.
You do see my point. The whole weight of the evidence I've gone over supports your account. But nothing in it positively proves your brother's guilt. Only one thing can.
I'm not interested in proving my brother's guilt.
Not even now. Mr. Arnitt, one witness placing either of you in the Crosby north of Newcastle at 1 o'clock this morning
would equally place the other in Cornwall. Well,
Mr. Arnitt, the young lady I met this morning. Why was she here?
Ask her.
I'm asking you. Your brother contends she was with him.
With him? Where?
In the Crosby, Mr. Armitt.
That is utterly impossible. That young lady and I have been living together on and off for 15 months.
He claims an off period developed about a week ago. He says you stole his car yesterday. He came here to get your car, and Miss Sparling came in a few minutes later, a little inebriated and considerably depressed. He knew there'd been trouble between you. He was glad to see her. He'd always liked her in a casual way. He puts the possibility that he was doing you one in the eye more than entertaining himself. But the matter developed quickly, I understand. In the end, according to your brother, she consented to go to Scotland with him for the weekend. In the Crosby.
You remember your plainclothes constable,
I beg your pardon?
who saw James come in here at 10 to 8 this morning?
Yes?
Did he see Miss Sparling come in with him?
No, he didn't.
No. Mark that.
I have. However, he didn't see her enter with you either.
Yes, but then he didn't see me enter at all, did he?
No. I must know if there was a witness, sir.
I see. Would you mind asking the detective sergeant to step in?
Yes, but
Ask him to come in, please.
very well. Step in, will you, Daniels?
All right, sir.
Understand this, Superintendent. I was never interested in proving my brother's guilt. But I've got to put a stop to these wild stories of his before he tries them in an open court. If I satisfy you now, I hope you'll find a way of dissuading him from compelling you to produce witnesses unnecessarily.
Yes, what did you want, Super?
The super didn't call you. I did. Get your notebook out, will you?
All right, sir.
Now, just wait a moment, please. Mercia, come up here, will you?
Have they gone?
No, but don't worry. Come on up. Come on. You haven't met Detective Sergeant Daniels, I think. Daniels, this is Miss Sparling.
How do you do, Miss Sparling?
How do you do?
I'm sorry, Mercia, but your evidence is going to be necessary after all. I'd hope to keep you out of it, but... Well, just tell the superintendent where you were last night, will you?
Perhaps I can prompt you, Miss Sparling. Were you by some chance in the Crosby experimental car?
Don't be afraid, Mercia. Just tell the truth as you told me you would, if you had to.
Yes, I was in the Crosby.
Write it down, Sergeant.
Yes, sir.
With Mr. Armitt, I take it.
Yes.
Put that down, too.
Mr. James Arnitt.
What?
James?
Yes. He was here when I came in yesterday. He told me you just left, Marshal, for a house party in Scotland.
Now, Mercia, wait
and
a
that
minute.
you tried to get in touch with me. He said you wanted him to drive me up.
Mercia, don't do this. You don't know what's involved. It's not just a road accident.
How did you enter the flat this morning?
Yes? How?
Through the back entrance.
With me?
No, alone.
Superintendent, I can explain this. We had a row this
Can
morning.
you prove you were in the Crosby last night, Miss Sparling?
I knocked a man down, north of Newcastle, at about 1 o'clock.
What?
You were driving, miss?
Yes. I became hysterical, and when I rang for an ambulance, I wouldn't leave my name.
You're lying. James, I rang for the ambulance.
The hospital reported that the caller was hysterical and the line was bad. But the voice could have been that of a woman, Mr. Armitt.
Then James drove the car to Newcastle, put me on the train, told me to come here and get into Marshal's bed.
And say you'd been in it all night, miss.
Let her speak for herself, Danny.
Yeah, very well, Super.
Yes, and say I'd been there all night. He didn't come with me. He said he'd ring his mother in Cornwall to get her to make an alibi for him. Everyone was to think the car had been stolen.
By a person unknown.
So you came to London separately?
Yes.
Of course we did. When I rang Mother, James answered. It was his idea. We met here. I followed Mercia down on the train. But it's not true she was driving the Crosby. I hit the man. It was my fault.
Very generous of you to shoulder the blame, Mr. Arnitt. But I think I have two witnesses to say you weren't in the car at all.
Now, just a minute.
You were in Cornwall.
Two witnesses who can't prove it.
Can you, Miss Sparling?
I don't know. It depends if they found my glove.
Show it to her, Danny.
They sent it down from headquarters, miss. Is this it?
I can give you its mate. I've got it here.
Mercia.
That won't help, Mr. Arnitt.
You swore nothing, Mercia. You signed nothing. You can take it all back. And you've got to. You don't know what it's about.
I do know what it's about, Marshal. I read it in the newspaper. You killed your mother.
But you couldn't have. There was nothing in this morning's paper. I looked after the sergeant came and told me. You saw me, Daniels.
Yes, I remember, sir.
It was splashed in the first edition of the afternoon papers, Mr. Arnitt, and they come out quite early Saturdays. I delivered one to Miss Sparling while she was in your garage. But I guessed she might be there.
Then Mercia. Oh, Mercia, this is no sort of wedding present at all, is it? Mercia, look at me.
No, Mr. Arnitt. You look at me. Marshal Arnitt, I arrest you on a charge of having murdered your legal mother, Audrey Arnitt, at Tranquil, Cornwall, at or about 2:30 this morning.
That was It's the Geography That Counts by Raymond Bowers, presented by members of the Bromley Repertory Company. The cast was as follows: Marshal, Gerald Flood; James, Tony Tanner; Hurst, Robert Hartley; Mercia, Sally Smith; Daniels, Arthur White; and Fletcher, Brian Osborne. The production, which was recorded, was by William Glen-Doepel.